Hey my dear friends, Sam Haymart with Test Driven TV. Today we are test driving the 2022 Honda Civic Si, the vehicle that's been completely redesigned, and for 2022 the Si High Performance version gets a few tweaks to make it even better as well. So we're going to show it to you inside and out. We're going to take it for a drive and then I'm going to tell you what I really think. Before we get out on the test drive, let's talk about what we've actually got here. Now for 2022, the Civic is in its latest generation, a vehicle that's been completely redesigned from the ground up, and the styling, interior, exterior, everything is new, and a lot of improvements have been made to the chassis. But this is the high performance Si version, currently the most high performance version you can get until the R arrives. And in that way, we are pricing out here on this one at $28,000 and some change, and that includes the optional orange paint that you see here, and I really like this color. But let's talk about what's different with the Si from the standard Civic sedan. What's different here is that the nose just above the grille curves down a little bit more. They're calling it the upper bumper in our pressed material. So the lower fascia actually remains pretty much the same as the regular Civic, but that upper bumper area above the grille and the grille itself is unique to the Si. And there you also see the Si logo off to the side and headlights on this LED. Coming around the corner, you can see how that grille in the face really sort of has a ship's prow leaning forward kind of profile. But looking at the wheels on this particular vehicle, 18-inch flat black, satin black finish alloy wheels, and looking down the side, black mirror caps, and the window trim on this is also blacked out. From this angle, you can really see how this blacked out window trim really does give this a little bit more of a monoblock kind of appearance. Sometimes the chrome just overdresses these things when we talk about performance cars. That decklet spoiler in black really pops, and the best thing about it is they've kept it tasteful. It's not over the top like maybe the Civic R, right? It's just enough, but it's not too much. And of course, LED taillights. Now these taillights, I really do like the way these look on the sedan. I like the way they look on the hatch a little better, but we don't have an Si hatch here. Down in the lower fascia is the dual exhaust, the other major thing that sets this apart visually from the regular Honda Civic sedans. Those are genuine, they're big, they're fat, and I think they really make the statement about performance here. The interior of the Si is distinctly different from any of the other Civics in the line, and you can see that right away looking at these pictures. Red trim across the dash, and this dash is one that I've liked in the last couple of Civics that I've tested because I love the detailing with the honeycomb grille and the hidden vents. And like most Hondas I've ever experienced, the switchgear quality and overall execution of this interior is quite good. These are sport seats that are specific to the Si. They have increased bolstering and a red cloth that really holds you tight, and I find that they're very comfortable. They are manually adjustable across the board, and they are not heated, but as far as sport seats are concerned, these are some of the best in the business in terms of comfort and really keeping you where you need to be. Other touches on the interior include that same red trim on the door panels and a unique applique trim here on the center console. Also noticed here is the console shifter, 6-speed manual, and it does have the very famous to the Si and as well as the Civic R, the metal shift knob. And we'll talk about that when we go for a drive, but it gets pretty hot in the sun, at least here in Arizona. The steering wheel is covered in leather, and of course it has the red stitching accent to go along with everything else. And ahead of me is the same instrument cluster we've seen in other Highline Civics with a partial digital screen and then an analog dial on the right. And it all lights up to look contiguous. It's a very good instrument cluster, and it does have some extra graphics and a few extra things that go along with the Si. Center stack, screen up above, vents, HVAC controls are in the center, nice high quality switches. Below that, a little cubby for your phone and the ports to connect everything up as far as power and connections. And then the center console, to the left of the shifter, the drive mode selector, the auto start stop switch, and the parking brake. Cup holders down low so that you can have big cups here and they're not going to get in your way with the shifter unless you really go crazy. Center console storage opens up here, and below down inside they're about the same size as a square tissue box. Not super big, but plenty for a car of this size. And above me, of course, is a moonroof, which is included on this trim grade. The rear seat of the Civic Si is like the Si Touring that we tested last year. Actually a pretty comfortable spot for a compact sedan. Even though we're sitting down low, it doesn't feel like I'm sitting in a hole, and that's backed up by the fact that I've got plenty of leg room. These seats set for my height, about 5'8", and you can see I've got plenty of leg room here, and because the seat does have some contouring, even though my knees are perched up just a little bit, I am, for the most part, pretty comfortable. One thing notable back here is that the trim isn't quite as decorative as it is at the front. The door panels in the front have a gloss black piece here, and they have red trim here. In the back, it looks like a base Civic. There's none of that color, none of that trim. It's like they sort of cut a few pennies here. Not a bad thing, just worth noting. But also worth noting is the fact that there are no AC vents here in the back seat, let alone any charging ports. Something that is a bit of a gap in this class, as a lot of its competitors do have vents back here, even on the base models. Now, the seat, of course, does fold down in a 60-40 split, giving you access for long things in the trunk. A pretty sizable trunk as it is. Unfortunately, if you pull that floor up, like most sports sedans in this class, you will not find a spare, but rather a fix-a-flat kit to get you away from that terrible, terrible emergency of a flat tire. When it comes to rating this interior, overall I'm very impressed with the design, the look, the comfort of the seats. A few things that I've noticed when I drove it this week is that there were a few squeaks and rattles in here, which I find a little bit bizarre in a Honda, but they were there, and we're missing a few features. Now, yes, some of the money for the Si goes to the performance, some of the extra bits under the hood and the chassis, but this interior is missing a few basic features like vents in the back, charging ports in the back, and perhaps maybe even heating elements for these seats. But overall, very well done. I like it. 4 out of 5 stars. The infotainment system in the Civic is one of the better that I've experienced from Honda of late. This is a 9-inch color touchscreen, and it has a volume knob. It has tuning buttons here, not a knob, but there are hard controls for tuning. A very big improvement from the old slide touch sensitive things from before. It has Bose audio, 12 speakers, and it does have Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, and they're wireless. Big, huge deal, making it so much easier to get in and out of your car and just have that connect up without having to tether yourself to all sorts of wires. It does have a good backup camera, but missing here are some of the features like lane watch, which Civics have had in the past. I kind of miss that. They don't do that anymore. And also not here is any form of navigation. And again, not a big deal, but it is something that a lot of cars in this price range are featuring. This is a system I'm impressed with for the most part when it comes to graphics, menu, usability, far improved from before, and the audio quality is great, but missing a few features. This system gets 4 out of 5 stars. All right, my friends, now the most important part of the video and what everybody wants to see is how this thing drives. And so the first thing we're going to talk about is what's under the hood. This has a 1.5 liter turbocharged VTEC engine, 4-cylinder of course, and this year it has 200 horsepower and 192 pound-feet of torque. Now, that's down 5 horsepower from last year, but what they've done to compensate is that they've actually moved the torque curve further down into the rev range. Now, 192 pound-feet of torque is available on a linear line from 1800 to 5000 RPM. And that goes a long way to allowing you to use the power of this engine more often and much easier. Cattle guard. But if you watch my videos, you know the question I always like to ask is, how does it go? So we're out in the middle of nowhere, nobody around. I'm going to come to a complete stop. We're in sport mode and traction control is off. So let's see it. Now, I didn't over rev it to start out, so we didn't have a lot of wheel spin. If you do drop the clutch at a high RPM, you'll get a lot of wheel spin. Now, I talked all the way through 60 miles an hour, but it came pretty quick. And the sound of this thing, really nice. Just very smooth and refined, yet sporty. A little bit of torque steer. Now, this does have rev matching because it's got a lighter flywheel this year, and so it's just there. and it works pretty well. It's very seamless. Power, as I mentioned, because of this torque curve, is pretty much always there. You don't have to over rev this thing to get power, as you saw back there at the takeoff. So one of the things this does have that I was surprised about was auto start stop on a manual. Ick. Not my favorite thing ever. That is to help save fuel. This is rated at 27 mpg city, 37 mpg highway, and 31 combined. Now, I did not achieve that this week. I got like 28. But out of fairness, you know, I'm driving it, I'm controlling it. With an automatic, the computer controls everything, and that number is a lot easier to achieve than when I'm revving it to where I want to rev it. You know, those numbers usually expect you to shift at 1,000 RPM, sarcasm, but so I don't do that. So the only thing I'm really disappointed with here is auto start stop, and it could use a little more power, honestly. It's a heavier car, cattle guard. So powertrain comes in at 4 out of 5 stars. Well, that was a good deal of fun. Yay! I love going fast on a back road and really letting a car rev out. Rawr. Okay, so talking about chassis ride and handling, this is a larger car than the last generation. It's got a 1.4-inch longer wheelbase. It has a stiffer structure, and for the SI, they've given it bushings from the Civic Type R, so they're stiffer. They've given it stiffer springs, stiffer anti-roll bars, and of course stiffer dampers. Yet the ride is still what I would call supple. It's not overly done like the Corolla Apex I drove last month, which beat you to death for no reason. This is a car that gives you the same handling quality and fun to drive, throw it on the back curveness without beating you to death. That I love. Road noise is a little bit on the higher side. It's 65.8 decibels on our 70-mile-an-hour freeway test. Average is around 62, 63. I attribute most of that noise to tires, most likely because of these higher performance tires on here. Another refinement they've made here that you can totally feel is the steering is a lot smoother and more refined, and that goes to refinements they made in the software and in the hardcore rack. But the best part about this chassis is you can really throw it around. It gives you that feel that you expect from an SI. It's sharp, it's precise. As I mentioned with the ride tuning, it's supple, which means you can live with it every day and still go out and have a good time on a back road. That is wonderful. We do have drive modes, of course, and that affects a number of things, including the steering feel. So I'm impressed with this chassis. Everything just seems to work just right. Everything's in balance with each other, and it feels like a system. And not all cars pull that off all that well. So this chassis gets 5 out of 5 stars. Oh, one last point of order here. The shift knob. I love the look of this metal shift knob. It looks cool. It feels good in your hand, except when you parked it in the sun. Oh my God, this thing will burn that shift pattern right into the palm of your hand. I said that on the last SI test drive and the SI test drive before that. It's the coolest thing in this car that has just got to go. Man, that was fun. Let's talk about value now. Dollars and cents and spreadsheet stuff. How does this compete? Well, what can you look at? You can look at the Jetta GLI, the Hyundai Elantra N, perhaps the Corolla Apex that we just tested last month, although that one doesn't have quite what this has got in terms of overall package. This does not have the most power in class. It doesn't have the least. But you look at the price here, $28,000 and some change as equipped, the only option really being this optional paint, which I like. So you could get this for just a little bit less. I think we're at a pretty good parity in value. The only one area in the metrics that I look at that this doesn't really come to the top of the class is warranty coverage. Hyundai does offer a much longer warranty. That said, very small detail. I put value here at 5 out of 5 stars. When you put that in with everything we've already talked about, we're at 4.5 stars for this review. And you know what else? I'd buy it. It goes on my buy it list for 2022. If I were buying a front wheel drive hot sedan, this would be the ticket for me. I really do think that this is a nice overall package. It's a great price. The quality, the styling, everything really just top of class. So there you go. If you liked the review you just saw, follow us on social media. You can get news and other things we don't always do videos about right down there. The full gambit, Test Driven TV across the board. You can also see our latest video right there. And best yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel right down there.